This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank Indictor on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's showtime, folks. It's episode 29 of Game On here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I'm Johnny Montalbano. That's Hank Indictor. Hank, good to see you. Welcome. How are you doing?
Always a pleasure, Johnny. I'm doing pretty good. Very relieved that our Yankees are moving on to the ALCS, but am I optimistic about that series? Well, that's a story we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm happy. I'm relieved that we got out of that series because it could definitely have been one to talk about in an entirely different way if we didn't get there. But Yankees took care of business. Wasn't easy, but they got past the Guardians. And Hank, I'm looking forward to this show because we have a lot to discuss. In fact, we pushed the show back a day this week just because of the Yankee game. So the Yankees postponed we got postponed. We had to postpone our show. Of course, I gave everybody a little bit more of a heads up than Rob Manfred of Major League Baseball did, but that's how we roll here. But it's good. It's good to for good reasons because Hank, like I said, we have a lot to get to as we usually do here on the show. And of course, folks, we want to hear from you. So plenty of ways for you to get aboard. You can follow us across all of our social media platforms on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB, on Instagram at GameOn_ETB. You can also subscribe to us, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when all of our shows have programming coming out. You know, we got so many shows, we got so much content. In fact, this is the start of 3 days straight of content here for Game On with our episode here on Wednesday. We've got also our Monty Moment coming out on college football, which we're going to get to during the show today as well. That's going to come out Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Our Football Friday picks will come out Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I love doing them, but Hank, you and I are both struggling this year, but it's been that kind of year. So it's not our fault. That's just the reality of the NFL through the first 6 weeks. And we're going to get to the college football. We're going to get to the NFL. We're going to get to the NBA, which actually is underway right now. And it's crazy because that's not even the second or third biggest thing happening right now. But that's a good thing to have, right?
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. But Hank, like you said, we're going to get things rolling with the baseball, and we will get to the Yankees in just a few minutes. But I want to start in order here with these series and just go back and look at the league division series for a minute because, boy, I'll tell you, they were definitely full of upsets, shockers, fun, all those different kind of adjectives that you want to use because it started really right at the top with the defending World Series champion Braves falling to the Phillies in 4. And Hank, you look at this Phillies team, and I had said before that if the Phillies were going to get past the Braves in this series or really just be successful going forward, they were going to have to outslug their way to wins. And they've been able to do that. And in some ways, they've even been able to outpitch with Aaron Nola, with Zach Wheeler. They were able to even outpitch him. But, boy, they were able to, outscore him too. 7 runs in game 1, 9-run output in game 3, an 8-run output in game 4. And they're showing you that, maybe they're one of those teams getting hot at the right time and maybe making a deep run here in October.
It certainly looks like it because hours after the Yankees finished off the Cleveland Guardians, the Phillies ended up winning 2-0. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber each hit solo home runs in that game. The Schwarber home run, I'm pretty sure, is still landing. But back to this series, though, yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. The Phillies did what they had to do. They out-homered and out-hit the Braves big time. And I don't know whether you could attribute that to the fact that the Braves had so much time off after clinching a hard-fought division title or whether the Phillies just were simply a hungrier team. But in either event, it was a very shocking series win by the Phillies. And, hats off to Rob Thompson because I talked about this with Nick last night on Hitting for the Cycle. He might very well, I'm going to go on a limb and say he has probably done the best interim managing job in Major League Baseball history, because let's go back a little bit. June 3rd, the Phillies are 7 games under 500. He comes in and the Phillies go on a massive win streak, which, I'd like to compare that to the 1988 Red Sox with Joe Morgan's Magic, but the difference is I don't think the Red Sox were even under 500 at all when they made the managerial change. In fact, they were at exactly 500, and they were only in about 4th or 5th in what was really kind of a close division that year between the Yankees and the Tigers. But of course, that year also you didn't have a wild card to worry about. So make with that of what you will. Thompson pretty much was able to get the best out of his team after they simply were unable to really respond well to Joe Girardi, who, make no mistake, I still think is a great manager. I just think at that point, every manager somehow has their expiration date. He couldn't really get through to his players anymore. And, sometimes that happens and change is necessary. But anyways, Thompson not only has the Phillies at an insane pace, he gets them to the playoffs. They sweep the Cardinals, which I did not see coming at all. I mean, look, granted, I thought the Phillies would make it challenging with their starting rotation, but a sweep of the Cardinals, I would have thought that was a stretch. And then obviously nobody saw them beating up on the defending World Series champion Atlanta Braves. And not to mention, you want to know one other thing he did that Joe Morgan didn't do? Win a league championship series game. Because as a matter of fact, Joe Morgan got swept both times he took the Red Sox to the ALCS.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's just amazing because this Phillies offense, which we've been waiting to see get going here for a while. I mean, they've been getting it going, and really it's been since Bryce Harper came back to the lineup. He was out there for about 6 weeks or so with that thumb injury that he suffered at San Diego, ironically enough. And then ever since he's come back, this Phillies team has just taken off. And even just in this postseason, Bryce was actually still struggling with fastballs, and you've seen him now. He's actually adjusted with the fastball and really have gotten it going. And it's just, yeah, and it does bring up the question mark, and it even brings up with the Padres. Is this layoff actually hurting the better teams more than helping? It is doing that because we saw that even with the Padres as well. But yeah, you've been seeing this a lot in sports the last few years, in all sports really, except really basketball. But if you just get in and you get hot at the right time, you can transform that into a deep postseason run. And the Phillies have done that, and they took game 1 from the Padres, and we'll get into that series in just a few here. But yeah, just an amazing thing with Philadelphia for sure, because I did not see that coming. I actually really thought that, and we had spoken about this last week, there was definitely a potential for an upset or two in the division series, but Philly to me was not that one. And it just goes to show you never know in sports. And they definitely have gotten it done here, and I would not be surprised. There's still a bit of concern with Philadelphia in the Padres series, but look, where they've gotten to right now, especially after the firing of Girardi and where they were going, definitely a pretty cool thing to see over there.
There was one other thing I didn't mention about Rob Thompson, by the way. He was in the Yankees system as a minor league coach for a long time, works his way up to the big leagues. He spends his entire coaching career, he's there for the entirety of the Joe Girardi tenure as the Yankee manager. And then obviously he followed him over the Phillies, because that happens a lot with the managers. Whenever they leave, their coaching staff sometimes goes with them. And then finally gets his chance after, I'm sure, a lot of years where he probably never thought that this was going to happen. But so definitely great for him.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to see. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Philadelphia sports, but this thing with Philadelphia, I have to respect it for sure, what they're doing over there. Now, transferring it over to the ALDS for a second, the Mariners and the Astros, and boy, it looked like Seattle. Seattle, to me, Hank, had their shot in this series to at least make it a statement. In game 1, they're holding a lead in the 9th inning, and Houston comes back with 2 runs off of Seawald, and then a 3-run walk-off by Yordan Alvarez. And Hank, I said this to you and everybody that we have here at the on our group chat at the time, and I'll say it a few days later. To me, Seattle lost this series in game 1, not being able to hold on to that lead, and not only holding on to that lead, but the way it happened, bringing in Robbie Ray in that situation, I said it at the time. You guys can be my backup in this, and I'll still say it now. That, to me, was the kiss of death. I mean, my biggest pet peeve with baseball in the postseason is you're bringing in a starting pitcher into a reliever role. Look, as Yankee fans, we have seen that happen way too many times in recent years in the postseason, and you're doing it in this spot. This was, at first guess, a mistake. You bring in a starting pitcher into a reliever type role. It just doesn't work. And Yordan Alvarez, who has been one of the better hitters in baseball recently, just absolutely destroys that fastball down and in. And the Astros won Game 1, and Seattle just was never able to overcome that. You know what? Houston wins Game 2 again. They're trailing in the late innings, come back, and they win Game 2 4-2. And then that classic scoreless tie into the 18th inning when Jeremy Pena hits that solo home run, and Houston wins 1-0 in Game 3, and they have a 3-game sweep over the Mariners. Hank, what was your thoughts? Because I really think that was the turning point of the whole series, which was the first game when Robbie Ray comes in. What was your thoughts about that and this entire series in general?
I mean, let me piggyback on your point, because there were a lot of people debating whether or not that you should have even pitched to Alvarez at all. And my rebuttal with that is, while I can understand the idea of walking him in that spot, because obviously he's one of the most feared hitters in that lineup. The problem with that thinking, and the reason why I say at least pitching to him somewhat made sense, is because had you let him on base, you would have put the go-ahead run on, and Alex Bregman was up on deck. What if Bregman ends up hitting an RBI double with 2 outs? Everybody's going to be running. So that probably could have backfired anyway. So I'm not going to roast the Mariners for that situation, even though if they did want to walk him, I can understand it. However, with that being said, I agree with you. It's one thing if you're going to put a starting pitcher in a game, if this is like an absolute do or die moment, a la the San Francisco Giants in Game 7 of 2014, when they let Madison Bumgarner pitch. But if you're 1 out away and you're deciding, let's use our starter just to close out this game, that is highly unnecessary. And if you have a relief pitcher that, doesn't, and it sends a bad message to your relief pitchers. If you can't trust them to get 1 out in that situation, I think that's a pretty bad sign right there, especially if you're going to rely on Robbie Ray later on in the series. It just, the whole thing to me never made sense. And yeah, like you said, I thought Seattle had a chance to really make some noise, but it didn't matter if Seattle won one of the subsequent games. You just knew they weren't going to come back and win that series, because if you have an opportunity to step on the throat of a really feared opponent, that was the time to do it, and they couldn't. But with that having been said, you also have to tip your cap to the Astros, because they didn't even get their best pitching performance from Justin Verlander, nor did they even get a good performance at the plate from Jose Altuve. But at the end of the day, as cliched as it sounds, good teams find a way to win, and they are back into the ALCS for what I believe is the 6th year in a row. So say what you want about their scandals, say what you want about everything about their team. That's still quite impressive of a feat in Major League Baseball. And I think now really the question is, can they add to it? And they're going to be under a lot of pressure to do that because of all the backlash that's still emanating from the 2017 season. But anyways, I digress. Definitely a big series win for them. I think the only really question for them going forward is, are they going to be able to play despite a layoff? Because I pointed this out with Nick yesterday, and that was that those 3 games against the Mariners were their only 3 games in the 13 days since they played game 162 of the regular season.
Yeah, and the thing will also be, though, the Yankees have a quick 24-hour turnaround from the final out of game 5 of the DS to game 1 of the CS. But I don't think really you brought up also, that's another reason why that game 1 loss was so devastating, because Justin Verlander has a very, very rare postseason poor start, and you actually you shut out Jose Altuve. Altuve went 0 for 16 in the division series, and you're still not able to pull off a win in any one of those. And if they win that first game, maybe the series does change, just turn around. Maybe it goes 5, maybe, and you never know after that. But Scott Service, to me, has done a remarkable job up there in Seattle, made such a major mistake and a fatal flaw by putting in a starting pitcher in that kind of role, and it backfired him. I had no problem with him pitching to Alvarez. I had a problem with the way they used it by putting in a starting pitcher to try and close the game out. Now, of course, the hindsight would have been, if you look at the Yanks, that Garrett Cole was warming up in the 9th inning of Game 5 when it looked like there could have been men on base and he might be coming into an inning. And that would have also been a mistake. But still, they never were able to overcome that. And you do have to give the Astros some credit too, and you have to respect like what they've been doing, scandal or not. I mean, to make it back to the league championship series 6 years in a row is absolutely incredible. And we'll find out when they play the Yankees starting on Wednesday night how far they can go. But it just a very, very tough way for Seattle to go out, and then you go 18 innings and not able to score against Houston, and you lose 1-0 in Game 3, and even in Game 2 was also rough too, because they had a 2-1 lead late, and Houston scored 3 runs to take the lead and win Game 2. So just all around, I think that would also shows you how dangerous Houston is going into the LCS as well. So Houston gets past Seattle to advance on, and then the other big upset was the Padres getting past the 111-win Dodgers. And I thought this series actually could have had 5-game potential. And really, when you look at it, you have to give the Padres credit. This could be one of those situations of a team getting hot at the right time. But we also did say before the season that the Padres were going to be a dangerous team. And if you look at it, they've been doing it really with their pitching staff. It's been the starters. It's been, Musgrove. It's been Darvish. It's been Snell. It's been that bullpen. I mean, it wasn't like and you look at Game 1 of the NLCS that they got blown out or Darvish had a bad start. It was 2 solo home runs, and that was it. But the Padres able to get past the Dodgers in 4. And once again, you look at it, the Dodgers, unbelievable regular season, but offense goes quiet, bullpen fails late, things that were very, very concerning, that it looked like the Dodgers had not played a meaningful game in such the longest time. And now this has been really a decade of regular season dominance for the Dodgers, and one World Series to show for it in a 60-game neutral site, no fan, pretty much regular season. Hank, the talk right after this series was, do the Dodgers need to make a change at the top with Dave Roberts? And the LA Times did report that Dave Roberts is safe, but they might be making changes elsewhere. What to make of this?
Honestly, I personally think that you're probably going to disagree with me, but I think Dave Roberts probably should have been canned after the 2019 debacle against the Washington Nationals in Game 5. And I don't care that he won a series. That one, as great as it was, the circumstances were still very unusual. And again, I'm not going to call that a Mickey Mouse World Series ring, because, at the end of the day, somebody had to win that World Series. Dodgers did it. And at the very end of the day, it's going to be looked at in the books as the World Series, but not everyone's who saw that is going to remember it the same way as others. But I digress. Dave Roberts has had a penchant for making weird lineups at the wrong decisions in the playoffs, and also over managing by putting in a bullpen when his starter is dominating for the Dodgers. And you look at the Dodgers over the course of I would say the years since Magic Johnson bought the team, they're not unlike the Yankees in the sense that a lot of the times the hitters will come to the plate and, they'll either hit a home run or strike out. You know what I mean? So I would probably, if they fired Dave Roberts today, I don't think too many people would be crying in Los Angeles, especially because if you really think about it, and you might like this analogy that I'm about to make, I would probably make the case that Dave Roberts is like the Doc Rivers of MLB managers, in the sense that he's only gotten one title to show for it, but had so many talented teams bail him out. I always thought the Dodgers really won in spite of Dave Roberts, more so than because of him. And I think having made the guarantee that they'd win the World Series and then having that 111 win season and getting blown out. Well, not really blown out, but getting embarrassed by the San Diego Padres. That's a bit of a red flag. And as I said, I've never been a big Dave. Really, the moment that I sort of realized Dave Roberts wasn't great was probably a combination of either when they blew it in Game 4 against Boston, or really when they lost that Game 5 with the Nationals, because they absolutely choked that series.
Well, I think Dave Roberts did remember on the Dan Patrick show before the season started to say that they were going to win the World Series.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. He
So
went out and made that guarantee, and then at the end of the day, they matched the same playoff win total as the Braves and the Mets.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And look, 111 win regular season, but really for the most part, the second half of the year didn't really have a lot of pressure on them because they had built such a huge lead. And the Padres made some moves, and then you look at what happened on the Dodgers side. You do have some injuries to that pitching staff towards the end of the year. Walker Buehler going for Tommy John surgery, so he's now out. Not only,
and I think I think having him definitely could have really hurt the Dodgers. And I said this was probably going to happen all year long.
Yeah, it definitely made a difference. And then that bullpen, which we had been talking about for a while now, very, very suspect. And you look at Game 4, Dodgers have a 2-0 lead, but the Padres end up, getting 5 runs off that bullpen and winning and advancing on. And I think next year is going to be a huge year there in LA, because let's say we have this situation all over again. Dave Roberts might be safe this year, but this happens again next year, Hank. I think you have to start looking at a different direction. And maybe you really have to wonder what the problem is, because to be this dominant for this long and to only have 1 World Series ring, it's definitely alarming. They've been probably the most consistent, dominant team in baseball, I'd say, for the past decade plus, and they have 1 World Series to show for it. They've been there 3 times, but only 1 ring to show for it. And again, the people can come out and say that it was in a shortened season, and with no fans or anything. That World Series was a classic one down there in the neutral side of Texas. But I think next year the Dodgers are going to be a team where a lot of people are going to be watching very, very closely, because I think if this happens again next year, I think you've got to go in another direction. I would make the argument you have to do it this year, because maybe it does have to fall on him. That team is too good to not go deep enough, and they're going to make some moves, because now you've got a major void in that rotation. Kershaw's another year older.
In fairness, I'm also going to play devil's advocate and say it's not entirely on Dave Roberts, because at the end of the day, you have a really talented team, and they just somehow couldn't get past the San Diego Padres. And even more shocking, a few years ago, you had the National Series, and then last year they probably would have beaten the Braves if everyone was healthy. Because if you remember last year, they pretty much broke down. But that's just me playing a little bit of devil's advocate. But again, at the same time, with all that talent, that core should have had more than 1 World Series. You can't change my mind about that.
Can I give you one baseball comparison for Dave Roberts?
Go for it.
Joe Girardi and the Yankees. Eventually, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be you want a new voice. And the way that Girardi left, a lot of people were questioning that, but they were saying you need a new voice there. Maybe you need a new voice in LA, because that team is too good. And eventually, other teams are going to start catching up. We've now seen the Padres have caught up. The Giants every other year seem to always, it seems like, are always in the mix too. I think the only teams right now you can count in that division that you can be better than, for sure, are the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, because they never seem to take the next step. But the Diamondbacks have some young talent that have come up that you've seen this year. That's going to be good. The league's going to catch up to them sooner or later. Then all these other guys that are on the team eventually, you know what? They're going to start getting older, or they're going to start leaving the free agency. So the window, I'm not going to say the window's totally shut, but it's starting to go in the other direction. And I'm thinking now you're looking at like a Joe Girardi kind of comparison here with Dave Roberts.
Yeah, that's a really good one, because Joe Girardi, as good of a job as he did as the Yankee manager, he also had his flaws too. I'm not going to kid myself. And I personally think the 2009 through 2012 stretch should have had more than 1 title. But again, maybe that's just me being a salty Yankee fan right there. But as I said, I remember those squads pretty much like it was yesterday. And at the very least, that they should have been to the World Series at least 1 more time after 2009 in those 4 years that I mentioned.
I think it's going to be one of the big stories next season in baseball. Going to be the Dodgers because they go through this again. I don't know if Dave Roberts can survive another year like this, especially when you go out there and promise. And look, you did your job in the regular season, 111 wins, but we had been talking about that second half of the year. They had not played much competition. It had been their pitching staff had started to fade a little bit. No Bueller. Gonsolin was out for a few weeks, and they were hoping to get some length out of him. He struggled in his one start. You got to look at possibly if you're the Dodgers here, you got to try and improve that rotation somewhat. And lineup is still good. I like the way that it's shaped up, but eventually that's going to need some. That's going to go through a transition, and you're going to get another year older in that lineup too, out there in LA. But let's also give the Padres credit too. This is not just a Dodger free fall. This is a Padre up and coming, and they're peaking at the right time too. They were a team that we were talking about a lot going into the season, and obviously the Tatis injury before in the offseason, and then the Tatis suspension. You thought it might have affected them, but no. Look what they do. They go out there and get Juan Soto, and Soto, who actually really has not done much there in San Diego, still though gives a presence in that lineup. And you look at this team, they're starting to bop right at the right time. It's funny, and they now have 280 win teams in the NLCS between the Phillies and the Padres. But yeah, just an incredible series. And then let's get to the Yankees here against the Guardians, an unbelievable 5-game set. And I was comfortable playing the Guardians, but the Guardians were a sneaky good young team, youngest team in baseball, 17 players making their major league debut this season. And really,
I think it was 16, actually, no?
What's that?
I think it was 16, no?
It's 17.
Oh, well, 17, okay.
Yeah.
Still, they pretty much set a record for most players.
Right, yeah, it was a record, but it was 17. But
for a playoff team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it was. But Hank, really, this series could have been talked about in a bunch of different ways. And between game 2, when the Guardians win game 2 in extra innings to decide the series, and then game 3 where they unbelievably, Yanks are pretty much controlling that game throughout, and then you go to the bottom of the 9th up by 2, and you bring in Clark Schmidt to try and get the final 3 outs, and then the whole controversy with Clay Holmes. Hank, this had the potential to be, I think, and I like Aaron Boone, but this had the potential to be his downfall because the way that he managed, not only really that, but the way that he managed game 2. Let me go back to game 2 for a second. Again, first guess, I spoke about it in the Seattle and Houston series. You're bringing in Jameson Taillon to be the first pitcher in the 10th inning. To me, can't do that. That's not a spot for a starting pitcher. The first extra inning. You want to talk about 12th inning later on? That's one thing. But in the 10th inning, and I get the Yankee bullpen had been in shambles, and it still kind of is. But to put Taillon in that spot, that was a mistake. Also, Clark Schmidt in the bottom of the 9th in game 3. Seriously. And that whole thing with Clay Holmes, Boone, let's be honest, Boone and the Yankees had a tough time in the series, and they still were able to get out of this because even, the Yankee defense was a problem as well in this series, and they were able to overcome that. And I think it was because also, not only because of the players, but Terry Francona and the Guardians had a rough series too. Not going to Bieber on 3 days rest in game 5, maybe not even, doing a bullpen kind of game. And also not challenging plays that should have been challenged, and then challenging plays that should not have been challenged. So
yeah, that
really, it was a rough series for both the managers.
Me the most that if somebody was going to outmanage the other manager, it would be Terry Francona outmanaging Aaron Boone, not the other way around. Even though it's not like Aaron Boone necessarily had a great series either. And I definitely agree with you about Jameson Taillon. However, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you on that take because I don't think that pitching performance was necessarily his fault because those bloopers that gave the Indians a lead would have been probably outs like 9 out of every 10 days of the week we're talking about. So in that sense, like Cleveland got lucky. But with that being said, I also didn't like the idea of having him start that inning to begin with. Oh, one of us called them Indians. I think we meant Guardians. So my bad there for whoever's watching. But gosh, I still somehow can't get used to the name change.
That's
but
quite all right.
In any event, I think the Yankees I think Aaron Boone definitely has mistakes, and probably some of the others were that he took his other relief pitchers out too soon, which is why I think we had Jamison Tyon pitching that inning in the first place. But it is what it is. I'd like to say second guess stuff by Aaron Boone and say, oh, we should have had this series over with sooner, and which I wouldn't really disagree with those points. But right now, I'm looking at the series is over. The Yankees won. They're still playing a game in the middle of October. So definitely relieved about that. However, with that being said, I'm also very nervous about the series coming up to the Houston Astros.
Yeah, it really was a remarkable series here against the Guardians because it had a little bit of everything. It had some postponements. It had some very questionable moves. And yeah, Boone changing relievers like they're hotcakes was just crazy. I mean, how about Wandy Peralta being the first pitcher being used in all 5 games of the division series was absolutely amazing. And, and the Yanks were able to even overcome, the Guardians out hitting them throughout the series. Really what also won the series for the Yankees was home runs. Judge, Stanton, they were able to get some key hits because their defense was very suspect at certain points in the series. IKF, Cabrera out there in left field, and it's good to see him back at shortstop. Donaldson, which just continues to annoy you in so many ways, even when you think he hits a home run and then he's out. So there were some base running blunders, and they were able to overcome all that to win this series. Harrison Bader, who did not hit a home run during the regular season in his brief time with the Yanks, comes in and hits 3 in this series. Some things you didn't like, but I think it also speaks to how good this team is, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see watch go up against this Astros team for the 3rd time in 6 years. Hopefully 3rd time is the charm. And as we transition over into the League Championship Series here, let's quickly talk about the Phillies and the Padres first. They played Game 1 on Tuesday. And, when the series started, I thought this was pretty cool to watch. Not only the 2 teams with 80-plus wins, and, of course, there's always going to be people saying, oh, this shouldn't be the case, but it is. But I was looking forward to this because you had the Harper versus Machado matchup. That was pretty cool. But Hank, when I look at these 2 teams and I look at this series, here's what I look at from the Phillies side. Really, their pitching staff, their pitching is really Wheeler, Nola, Alvarado, Dominguez, and a bunch of others who just throw the ball. That's the thing that would concern me from the Phillies' perspective. But, we saw that in Game 1. Wheeler pitched great, and they got the job done. San Diego's offense, to me, it's supposed to wear you down. They didn't really do that in Game 1. Wheeler only threw 83 pitches, but I'm looking at this series, and I think we're looking at a slugfest the rest of the way, especially when the series goes back to Citizens Bank Park there in Philadelphia. But I think it's very, very important here for the Padres to win Game 2. Otherwise, you're going down 2-0 going back to Philadelphia. I think this series is going to go 6. But I tell you, I can make the case both teams can win this series because I think it is kind of that close.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm leaning slightly more towards the Phillies because they're just such a hot team, and I don't know how I can really go against the hot hand. Now, granted, so are the San Diego Padres, but the whole, I know it doesn't really have the same ring as Morgan, but Thompson Magic, sorry, Red Sox fans who are remembering that era if I'm plagiarizing, but I don't know. It just seems to me like it makes too much sense for them to make that Cinderella World Series run. And what's kind of funny about Philadelphia teams? As much as you hate them, whenever they do well, it's when you least expect it. And this isn't just with the Phillies. Look at the Eagles, for example, when they won that Super Bowl run. Imagine telling me that was going to happen with Nick Foles as starting as a backup, And I would even argue and then of course I would say this is the most Cinderella Philly team since probably that crazy wild-haired 93 squad. Except this one's more likable and nobody that we know of on this team uses steroids. So,
no, and there's no Mitch Williams, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, Mitch Williams, the real life Ricky Vaughn. Same nickname, same number.
No, and in that same way, look at the 76ers. They're the one team probably you're expecting the most out of, and they seem to disappoint every year. They get there, but they don't get there. But yeah,
how the hell are the Flyers 3-0?
I'm telling you, John Tortorella,
No, it doesn't surprise me though, because Tortorella's, as I've told you, he's had a habit of like turning teams around and getting the most out of those players. It's just a matter of how soon is his expiration date going to be.
Stay tuned for that. But yeah, Hank, I wonder if can the Phillies continue to bop their way to wins. That's I think what they're going to have to do here. They're going to have to hit. They're going to have to continue to hit home runs. We don't like talking about the home run, but it's become really baseball, and it's been the postseason. It's been the home run ball. The Padres were not known for hitting home runs, and they hit a lot against the Mets. That's how they got to the sport. Plus, great pitching. Can they bop their way against the Phils? And the Phillies pitching staff after Nola does scare me. I think the Padres pitching is better, but I like the Phillies offense more. I really do. And something's going to have to give here. I think we're looking at least a 6-game series, and I agree with you. I think it is going to be Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I could see San Diego also making this too. But I like Philly in 6 to make it back to the World Series as well. Now, as far as the ALCS here, for the third time in 6 years, there's going to be a Yankee Astro ALCS. And when I look at this series, Hank, there's what you ask immediately is, how will the quick turnaround affect the Yanks? How is the long layoff going to affect the Astros? And look at the first game of the series, which is starting on Wednesday night. It's Tyone against Verlander. Are we going to get Verlander of his last start against the Mariners in Game 1 of the DS, or am I going to get the Verlander who was pitching like a Cy Young guy this season? The Yanks normally do struggle against Verlander, but I also then I look at the advantages to each team by position. I think the Yankees are better at catcher. I think they're better at first base. I think they're better all around in the outfield. I'm taking all 3 spots, but I think they're better in the outfield. I think they're better at DH, and that's it. I think, you see, the thing that stinks is no LeMahieu, I think hurts. I think no Benintendi hurts. It definitely shakes up the lineup. It would help the lineup. I think it would clearly affect not having them there. Marinaccio not being there in that bullpen. You saw the Yankees did make some switches with their roster for this series, but to me, the Astros are better at second. They're better at short. They're better at third. And they're better in the pitching staff, both starting pitching and bullpen. But when I look at this, when I try and predict this series, if this is going to be a short series, advantage Astros. Long series, advantage Yankees. Because I think the Yankees are going to have a bit of a struggle early on. But if the Astros take care of business early, I think they're going to win this series in 5. Or I think the Yankees win the series in 7. And wow. I'm kind of trending towards the latter, believe it or not. I think this is going to go long, and I think that's advantage Yankees. So Yankees in 7. I'm going with a rematch of the 2009 World Series here. Phillies, Yankees into the World Series.
I like that. And Johnny, listen, I hope you're right. And I wouldn't rule out the possibility of the Yankees being in the World Series. However, with that being said, at the end of the day, the thing with the Yankees is they've got to pounce early. They have to take at least one of the 2 games in Houston. If they don't win, if they go down 0-2, and look, I understand that Houston's a really tough place to play. That's going to be a very tough series because, look, you remember what happened one of the times the Yankees played the Astros. They weren't able to take any home game, and because they didn't have the advantage, they ended up having to sit at home on the couch during the World Series. And, last year they did take a game in Houston, but then Game 2 they ended up blowing, and then the Astros did not seem to feel unnerved playing at Yankee Stadium. So you'd like to think that maybe the home field advantage will help the Yankees in this series, but the problem is I just can't pick the Yankees in good conscience, knowing that this year they've just had, for the most part, a flawed team, and that won like 99 games. It's really amazing when you think about how Aaron Judge carried this team on a yearly basis. Granted, he didn't have as good of a division series, but he did hit a few home runs when it mattered. So in that sense, was he really that bad in the postseason? But in any event, the Astros just have the better pitching, and if it comes down to a bullpen game, then it gets really dicey. So, unfortunately, I have a rematch of the 1980 NLCS, which is one of the most exciting playoff series that no one really talks about.
Yeah. I make my prediction, Hank, and I'm also making it realizing that there is a very good possibility that we go back to the Bronx down 2-0. But at the same time, you know what? You don't panic until you lose a home game. I think 2-0 down going back to the Bronx, I think is not a problem. And I almost expect it. I'd be thrilled if they get out of this first out of Minute Maid Park tied at 1. Because you have to expect the rust to be a factor. Tyone against Verlander doesn't seem to be a fair matchup, especially since Tyone hasn't started a game now since September. But at the same time, you know what? You never know. This postseason, look at how crazy this postseason's been. So many crazy moments. Look at the two teams coming out of the West. Out of the NL. Shocker. The Yankees, how that series was against the Guardians. I don't think anybody really thought that series was going to go 5. But we'll find out. But it may take the Yanks getting back to the Bronx down 2-0 and having to rally to win the series. But I think it's going to go long. I really do. And the Yanks made some changes with their postseason roster. So Peraza, Montez, and Weissert got added as Aaron Hicks, who unfortunately got hurt. You hate to see what happened to him, by the way. As much as Yankee fans and people can't stand him, just the way that he went out there in that collision. And again, the Yankee defense, that's the thing. Other thing that scares me too is the defense. Got to be fair. But Peraza not there, obviously. Peraza's there. Hicks is not. Lukey is not. And Marwin Gonzalez, the veteran switch hitter who was the former Astro, is also off the roster as well. And I think that speaks to the fact that, Peraza may get some at bats in this series, because I think you're carrying him, and I don't know if you're going to start IKF at short because of his defense. You can't be giving the Astros extra outs in this spot. So, and the other thing to watch too, and I've spoken about this at the top too, Altuve was 0 for 16 against the Mariners. You got to think that at some point he's going to break out, have a couple of hits in this series. But, you want to be full shape defensively. And I know Rizzo's great at first base, but, the rest of that team, it's going to be something to watch here. But we'll see what happens here in this league championship series. Yankees, Astros, it seems like we've been on a collision course the entire season for it. And here we are, folks, for the third time in 6 years. And as Yankee fans, Hank, I think all we can hope for and ask is third time's a charm in this situation. And we're really even fourth time, because we did also lose in the wild card game against the Astros back in 2015. But hopefully third time is the charm for the Yankees against the Astros in the LCS. Well, we got plenty of other sports to talk about here in the middle to late of October. And Hank, one of the craziest weekends in college football this past weekend, where you saw 3 big upsets. Number 3, Alabama losing to Tennessee on a game-ending field goal. That scene there at Tennessee was epic, classic. I think they're still celebrating even a few days later as they make a bold statement. Number 7 USC, probably the only hope for a Pac-12 team to make the playoff now. That goes away as Utah beat them on Saturday night. And then Oklahoma State, who could have been the Big 12 representative, lost in a tough way on Saturday as well to TCU. So those 3 teams out. And I want to focus on the Alabama-Tennessee game here for a second, because we're going to get into this also during the Monty moment, which will drop on Thursday, folks. But this game to me, and this was a game I did not feel comfortable picking, because we didn't know if it was going to be Bryce Young, or if it was going to be if Bryce Young was going to play or not. But look at this game, and Alabama, 17 accepted penalties, the most under Nick Saban. If you watch this Alabama team this year, this is not the best Bama team that Nick Saban has been coaching. They're making several mistakes. Defense is struggling. But what it's also showing you, though, is Bryce Young is continuing to prove why he is the best player in the country. So it's not over for Alabama. They're going to have to run the table. They're going to have to win the SEC championship. We've seen several one-loss teams make the college football playoff, Hank. In fact, here's a fun fact for you. 20 of the last 32 playoff teams have had a loss. But right now, Bama's going to need to run the table, win the SEC championship. And I'll be honest, you look at this team though, that's still up in the air. You know what? They still got to play Ole Miss coming up. This is not a guarantee that Alabama is going to be able to run the table here. I mean, you can't count them out, but you look at that, and also Tennessee has got to be talked about as a college football playoff member. They best win in the country after beating Bama on Saturday. They have the best resume in the country, and which is perhaps against the SEC champs. And we'll see what happens. A couple of weeks from now, they play Georgia down there in Atlanta, and if they beat Georgia and even lose to Bama in a rematch, they could still get in. So the playoff picture right now, the way it's looking at is it's pretty much going to be mostly an SEC picture. It could be Georgia, it could be Bama, it could be Tennessee. Heck, it could be all three of those teams because they all could still be 11-1 and get in. And probably the winner of the Big Ten, whether that's going to be Ohio State or Michigan. But Hank, I mean, it's coming down the stretch here. We're now in the second half of the college football season. It goes by. I mean, you think the NFL season goes by fast. College football, where every game and the way you play every game is so critical. We're shaping up for an incredible stretch run here in the college football season. But I know you're not the biggest college football fan, but I'm sure you heard about what happened down there in Tennessee over the weekend with Bama.
Yeah, that was absolutely wild. Alabama getting a loss. I mean, Tennessee must have been a really strong team, and it looks like they're probably going to be in the playoffs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as Alabama goes, I don't know that I'm necessarily that worried about their chances. I mean, every now and then they'll have like one or two like shocking losses in a season. So I think they find a way to bounce back. I mean, as long as Nick Saban's still there and he's still got in charge of what's going on, I think the Crimson Tide are absolutely fine. But are they the best team this year? No, I would say probably not. I still think Noah will probably appreciate me for saying that his Bulldogs are probably still very high at that list. No.
Yeah, Noah's right. Georgia, to me, is still the best team in the country. I think Ohio State's up there, too. Bama, though, if you've been watching their games, there's something about them this year that's just not right. I mean, again, I think Bryce Young is playing like he could win the Heisman Trophy again this year, and you've seen the drop-off when he was out against A&M a couple of weeks ago, and you had Milroe in there. They were struggling, but they've been making so many mistakes this year with the penalties. Two of the most accepted penalty games that Nick Saban's had in his run in Alabama have happened this year. And those penalties have been costly. We saw it in the game against Tennessee. I think Tennessee is really good. And, they're scoring great. Their quarterback's been unbelievable this year. But I would never count out a Bama team. But they've still got – now these next couple of weeks are going to be a challenge. And I'm very curious. They're home to Mississippi State on Saturday. And I've already seen they're almost a 3-touchdown favorite. I don't know if Bama – they might win. They're going to win that game, but I don't know if they're going to cover 21 points. That's the thing, too. I think they're going to bounce back, but they have to now run this table, which includes going down to Ole Miss in a couple of weeks. That is not going to be an easy feat. Bama can't afford another loss, though. They've got to run this table here, and if they win the SEC championship, they will get in. They will take a one-loss Alabama team in. But if you've been looking at their games this year, it's definitely been a struggle. And really the wild card in all this, when you look at it. So I'm going to put Georgia in. I'm going to put Bama in right now. Probably you're only going to get one Big Ten team. So that's either going to be Ohio State or Michigan. When they play at the end of the year, that is going to be a huge matchup. And then, of course, in the Big Ten championship game, those two teams have been great, but I think you're only going to get one you might get two if Clemson loses down the road here, because Clemson, and they're playing better. Have they been perfect this year? No. They got Syracuse on Saturday at home. That's a huge game. I think if they win that game pretty convincingly, then Clemson's got to be discussed here. The ACC is trying to make a push here for a few teams as well, but the SEC is so good. The way that Tennessee has played this year, with their kind of convincing wins and now owning the best win in the country, and their resume is very, very sharp, they are also making a play here in the playoff, in the college football playoff. I mean, you're talking about the possibility right now, possibly 3 teams in. Well, the next couple of weeks will definitely determine that, but this is definitely worth watching now, because it was also a good day for Bama, because USC and Oklahoma State losing probably takes the Pac-12 and the Big 12 out of it. Mm-hmm. So it's really now all SEC, ACC, and Big Ten schools in the conversation here for the playoff as we wrap down the second half of the season. And in 2 weeks, on November the 1st, you are going to have your first official college football playoff rankings that come out on ESPN. And that'll also give us a clear picture. And remember, those college football playoff rankings are not the same as the AP Top 25 poll. So something definitely worth watching. Bama plays Mississippi State Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Clemson is home to Syracuse. That's worth watching. And Ole Miss plays LSU, also an important game if you want to include them in the conversation. I think Tennessee's got a very favorable game Saturday at noon as well, so they should be all right as well. But the playoff picture, all of a sudden now, it looked like last year wasn't that exciting. This year now, you've got the potential for so many different things to happen. That's the fun part, and that's the cool thing about a 4-team playoff. I know it's going to expand, but right now, the way this is positioned, I mean, it definitely opens up the possibility for a bunch of different scenarios in these next couple of weeks in college football. So worth watching as you head into your weekend, as you have a great college Saturday slate on Saturday ahead of the NFL slate on Sunday. And speaking of the NFL, Hank, week 6 in the books. It's crazy how every week goes every year quicker and quicker. We're now 6 weeks in. It started out, well, do we need to talk about last Thursday?
We can gloss over that one.
All right, I'll tell you what. Commanders won 12-7, period, moving on. Although, actually, with the Commanders, there is one thing to talk about with them this week, and that's with, obviously, the Dan Snyder thing was critical. But on the field, Kirk Cousins going to be out a few weeks. He had finger surgery, so it looks like Taylor Heineke is going to start for them. So something to watch. I'm sorry, did I say Kirk Cousins? I keep saying Kirk Cousins.
Carson Wentz.
It's Carson Wentz. I don't know why I keep associating Kirk Cousins with the Washington Commanders.
I don't know. He was with them for a while.
I know. I always say that. Yes, Carson Wentz was the guy got hurt, even though they won. And it looks like Taylor Heineke is in line to start Sunday against the Seahawks, but against the Packers. Okay, Nick, you can save that for the blooper reel at the end of the year as the Commanders win against the Bears. Falcons got past the 49ers 28-14. I'll tell you, folks, the Atlanta Falcons, very sneaky team. They're 6-0 against the spread this year, and they've been in every game. And 49ers were down some defensive players. The Falcons were down some offensive players. But, 2022, Marcus Mariota had a perfect first half. I mean, that's football, right?
Yep. Never know. Any given Sunday.
I know that. It's, what am I? Again, I'm 9 games under 500, by the way, in my picks. And we'll have our Football Friday picks. We'll do one pick coming up in just a little bit. And then we'll also do our full slate of picks coming up on Friday. But, yeah, Falcons 3-3. Crazy to say, one of the better teams in the NFC South through 6 weeks. I mean, I thought they were going to be the worst team in football this year. Well, worst team in football this year is in the NFC South. It's not the Falcons. So they win 28-14. Patriots behind Bailey Zappi, 38-15 over the Browns. I think the Browns, the fun part of their season, I think, is officially over now. And the Patriots, look, 2 straight weeks now of dominance. Got to be fair with them. It looked like they were trending in a bad way, but they win 38-15. And now Mac Jones looks like he's close to returning, but the Pats win. They'll take on the Bears on Monday night. The New York Jets, one of the best stories in the league so far this year, go to 4-2, a dominant 27-10 win over the Green Bay Packers. Hank, if we had empty the benches alarm sound effect, which I know you love, I would be ringing that 10 times right now for the Green Bay Packers because there is something definitely wrong with them. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers, if he's not healthy with that thumb, whether it's they're down so many, where they're not deep at the receiver core, they're down so many guys, or I don't know what the deal is, but Green Bay's got problems right now.
Yeah, but you also have to give credit to the Jets, whose defense, they showed up to play absolutely dominant. And you want to know a crazy fact? The Jets actually have a winning record against the Packers in their history. Yeah,
well, they don't play them that much, but yeah, it's that is crazy. That's, again, nature of the sport. But a game where Zach Wilson doesn't have to do much. It's really the Jets defense. It's the Jets running game. and they're a cool story right now. 4-2. I thought they were actually better than a lot of people were going to say. I didn't think they were 4-2 good, but hey, you know what? You got to be fair. They're doing quite a remarkable job, and ever since Zach Wilson has come back, they've definitely been able to get things going here, and we'll see if they can keep it going on Sunday against the Broncos over there at Mile High in Denver. Colts get past the Jaguars 34-27. This is a bad loss for Jacksonville. I thought this was actually a good chance for them to get it right. And now this is a few weeks now where Jacksonville's gone in the wrong direction. And the Colts, again, another team can't seem to figure out in that AFC South, but they now improved to 3-2-1, 34-27 over Jacksonville. The Vikings get past the Dolphins 24-16. That was with Skylar Thompson under center for Miami, and now it looks like the story that you heard this week is it looks like Tua Tagovailoa is trending towards returning on Sunday Night Football against the Steelers, which would be a great thing for the Dolphins who need him back and for football. But now all of a sudden the Vikings are 5-1, and Hank, they've got a 2-game lead, and remember they already have one win against Green Bay this year, so pretty much feels like a 2.5 to 3 game lead there in the NFC North.
Feels bigger, yeah.
And yeah, Kirk Cousins and
not to mention they've also won against common opponents such as the Bears and the Lions.
Yeah, no, that's definitely it. I know Green Bay hasn't had any really big divisional games just yet. They're coming up, but that's a big deal now to try and make up that kind of ground. I mean, I know we still got 12 weeks to go, but now you don't really have the tiebreaker in that spot. I still think that division is going to come down to late in the season, but the Vikings are starting to put a little bit of ground up early on.
Mm-hmm. And that could be huge for them.
Definitely something worth watching here. Bengals get past the Saints 30-26, so the Bengals now improved to 3-3. That was a big win for them. Saints banged up in so many ways right now. They have a quick turnaround. They play Thursday night against the Cardinals, but yeah, big win for Joe Burrow and the Bengals here.
Absolutely. And I think the Bengals are definitely inching a bit closer. And now I'm pretty sure they're actually tied for first place because, we're going to get into the other AFC Central or North teams too. But the New York Giants, big comeback win against the Baltimore Ravens. So if you're a Bengals fan, that definitely has to make you happy. So I think the Ravens still, though, have the tiebreaker because they did win that one game against them with the Justin Tucker field goal. But in any event, the Giants down by 10 in the fourth quarter, a come from behind victory. And then at the end, you had Kayvon Thibodeau getting the strip sack with Leonard Williams making the recovery. 5-1 with the Giants. And raise your hand if you thought that was going to happen before the season. Put it down. You're lying.
No, I didn't think 5-1. No, I did not. Hank, though, you got to be. I mean, I love it because what they're doing here,
mm-hmm.
It's really a full team effort. You know what? It's Daniel Jones who now has now helped with 3 comebacks. Giants have had 3 comebacks this year of 10 points down, and Jones has been the lead guy behind that too. And the Giants defense, let's be fair here. I mean, the defense has been absolutely amazing. They're first in fumble takeaways. They're tied for second in opponents' rushes and completions per game. They're 4th in opposing third down conversion, 5th in opposing red zone touchdown percentage. Opponents' time of possession, they're also 5th. They're tied for 7th in points allowed, and they're tied for 8th in 2-minute defense. I mean, and then you look at the offensive side, Saquon Barkley has looked like the Barkley that the Giants thought they were getting, kind of like his rookie year. Daniel Jones, I mean, say what you want. He has been incredible through the first 6 weeks.
A few other guys that are worth mentioning, I would say the offensive line. Evan Neal continues to improve. 34 pass blocking snaps. He only allowed 1 pressure. Andrew Thomas is still the anchor of that line. And then Wan'Dale Robinson had his first touchdown catch. And Daniel Bellinger quietly has been productive too. Definitely a good tight end the Giants drafted. He had a touchdown yesterday as well. And, besides just the catches that he makes, he's he's a really good blocker too. I mean, look at some of the runs that Daniel Jones has had where he's like done a good amount of blocking.
That is for sure. Yeah. I mean, when you get to 5-1 and the way you do it, it's a total team effort. And
Actually, let me give you the Andrew Thomas stats through 6 games.
Yes.
No sacks, 1 quarterback hit allowed, 8 pressures allowed.
Quite remarkable. And you want to know some fun fact? I mean, the Giants are full of fun facts. I mean, people can go out there and say that they don't deserve to be 5-1. They're the luckiest 5-1 team. They're the worst 5-1 team. First of all, get lost if you're going to do that.
It doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter. This is not college football. You know what? 5-1 is 5-1. If the Giants get 10 wins like this, they're going to be in the playoffs. But
if the Giants have so many games where they're going to just continue to come back in the fourth quarter, that's not so much lucky. That's a trend. That's a sign that the coaching staff knows how to adjust when things are going south.
Coaching and players. That's what it is. It's a total team thing, but it definitely starts with Brian Dable, Wink Martindale, Mike Kafka, all those kind of guys. But here's some fun facts for you. The 2022 Giants have won 3 games after trailing by 10-plus points, which is tied for the most in a single season in franchise history. The other 3 seasons they did that, 2016, their last playoff appearance. 2011, they won Super Bowl 46. And 2007, they won Super Bowl 42.
I saw that, actually. I love that. And I'll give you another fun fact. And sorry if I'm trying to steal your thunder there with the Giants.
It's really yours. I mean, I'm borrowing it from you. So,
but, the Giants record, we mentioned the Giants won 3 games when trailing by 10-plus points this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many times and from 2017 to 2021, when they were trailing by 10 points, they were 3-47. Not to mention, we're already 6 weeks into the season, and the Giants have exceeded last year's win total.
And here's some more good stuff. The Giants after halftime have outscored Mike Vrabel, Matt LaFleur, and John Harbaugh 55-19. That's Brian. You know what that is? That's Brian Dable being coach of the year.
Oh yeah, that's start by a new Giants coach in his first year since holy run-on sentence, Batman. Since Dan Reeves started 5-1 in 1993.
I mean, right now, I mean, the way you look at, I mean, I'm looking at all these teams, and I know we'll get to the rest of the week 6 games here in just a moment, folks. But I've watched pretty much all these games, either live or via Red Zone or on replay or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the best coach, and I'm not just saying this as a Giants fan. I mean this as a football fan. This is the best coach team in football. When you look at the talent level that they have now, look again. Am I telling you the Giants are the most talented team in football? No. Am I telling you they're the best team in football? No. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You look at 6 weeks. I can give you 3 great teams, maybe 3 crappy teams, and everybody else is, right up there in the middle. It has been that kind of year so far through 6 weeks. But, this is definitely the best coach team in football. And I don't see any sign of it slowing down here because, now you go down to Jacksonville on Sunday. You who else do you still have here? You go up to Seattle, which could be kind of that sneaky, tricky game. So that could be something to watch. But, I mean, you're 5-1 right now, and you go down to Jacksonville, who I know has been struggling. We'll see. But there's a lot of things you got to like. And if you watched every moment of the game, have they been the best team for 60 minutes? No. But they've been playing well enough to be 5-1. I would say that. And even if not, 5-1 is 5-1. You're not like college football where you're 5-1, but you're struggling to be 5-1. That's where it matters. If you're in the NFL and you're 5-1, it doesn't matter. So you take it and you run. That's what you do. You take the win and you move on. Every team's going to have maybe a win where you sneak in a win or something like that, but in a 17-game season, that's going to happen. But the Giants haven't been like that. And if you want to review all their games, their opening game against Tennessee, they were the better team for the second half. The game against Carolina, they were the better team throughout. We'll go through all of this, and I'm sure I'm going to do that with you, Hank, later on in the week here as well. But I mean, it's great to see. And knock on wood, for the most part, they've been healthy. Now, their receiving core, that could be, something to watch here throughout the season because, you still do have injuries at the receiving side. Tony has still been out. Galladay's been out. But that's the thing, too. So these guys go out, and you have guys like Sills. Wandale Robinson now has been getting involved in the offense, since he's been back. So that's been a great thing to see. Bellinger at the tight end position. That's the markings of a great team also. These guys go down, but other guys come in and they step up. They make big plays, and everybody's producing. One guy goes down, the next man steps up. That's the markings of a good team and a good, well-coached team all the way around.
100%. I agree with you.
And we'll find out here what happens with the Giants going into next week. Speaking, though, there's great moments with the Giants, and then there's bad moments with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. this was just brutal. This was the second straight week that the Bucs were a big favorite, and definition of insanity, going to the well over and over again, expecting a different result. And I went to Tampa again, and boy, an absolute dud. And this was even with Kenny Pickett being put in concussion protocol there for Pittsburgh, and Mitch Trubisky comes in, and the Steelers win 20-18. What is going on there in Tampa Bay? Is it Brady? Is it, the offense? Is it Todd Bowles? What is the deal going on here with Tampa Bay? There were moments I look at this, I was watching this game, and Brady just looks so lost out there. Almost kind of uninterested. All the drama regarding possibly going to Robert Kraft's wedding. I'll be honest with you. All that talk is because the Bucs are 3-3. That's really it. Because why else? Look, I'm not going to get into all of that, but Tampa's 3-3 through the first 6 weeks. If you look at the Bucs and you look at the Falcons have actually looked like the better team through 6 weeks.
And that's crazy because the Bucs actually won a game against the Falcons.
Barely.
And like you said, barely.
Hank, let's be honest. You go back to that game for just a second. The Bucs were up 21-0. The Falcons are storming back, making it 21-15. That roughing the passer call doesn't happen. I'll tell you right now, the Falcons are winning that game. The way that the things were going there, but that roughing the passer, which now seems to be, which everybody's totally overreacting to, is what saved so far the Bucs season.
Yep.
So they win. So the Steelers win 20-18. Hope Pickett's going to be all right. And now the Steelers will take on the Dolphins there on Sunday Night Football this in week number 7. Rams get past the Panthers 24-10. Oh boy, I tell you want to talk about the worst team in football? The Carolina Panthers. I was totally wrong on them. I said they were going to win 8 games this year. Oops, not good. And now, they were putting in third or fourth string guys. There's a third or fourth string starting quarterback. I know PJ Walker started for the injured Baker Mayfield, but it's just gotten to be really bad there. After Rule gets fired, they now have Wilkes coaching, and Robbie Anderson gets kicked out of the game, and then the very next day he gets traded to Arizona. It's really bad. It's a really tough spot down there.
I still can't believe they were leading at halftime of that game.
Well, see, when we did with the Football Friday picks, Hank, I know you and I differed, and this was one you got right. I didn't think that the Rams were good enough to be a 10-point favorite. And I thought that by accident you were going to get more out of Wilkes and PJ Walker than you were getting out of Rule and Mayfield. And they just did not.
No, if anything, instead, Wilkes screwed himself at the end of the first half, actually. And let me tell you why. Because they had the ball. There was 45 seconds left, and then they ran the clock. And then not only that, they let the play go off, and they just took a knee when they could have tried to go for a field goal.
You need all the points you can get right now. And Carolina could be that team that just starts unloading everybody. And I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think it's going to be, but it's already happened. They kick Robbie Anderson out of the game, which, I think that's the first time that's happened since Antonio Brown.
I would argue that they fleeced the Cardinals in that trade. I don't care what the value is.
Well, let me tell you, that was a situation of a team being desperate there in Arizona. You know what? They are on life support right now. I know they're getting DeAndre Hopkins back for their Week 7 game on Thursday against the Saints, but the sell-off has begun. If you can kick Robbie Anderson out of the game and then within 24 hours trade him to Arizona, And that is something. And of course, now all the rumors are going out there about Christian McCaffrey, about DJ Moore. It's not going to be as easy to trade those guys, especially with McCaffrey because of his contract. But right now, Carolina is selling off. I mean, when you hear about PJ Walker starting, and Walker is going to start their game on Sunday against Tampa Bay. Sam Darnold has been cleared to return from IR. I mean, the Carolina quarterback situation, is a mess. The whole team's just a mess. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is a team where you got to just break it down and start over again. And I know they've got Matt Corral there. Hopefully he's their future quarterback, but he gets hurt early on in the preseason and is going to miss the entire year. You know what? I had the right idea. NFC South team being the worst in the league, just the wrong one. This, as somebody who follows their games closely, living down here in South Carolina, the Carolina Panthers are the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there.
However, if they beat the Buccaneers on Sunday, you'll be ringing those alarms again for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's in your mind. We heard it.
Yep.
But so big problems down there. But the Rams definitely needed that win too to try and keep their season going here on Sunday. Speaking of those aforementioned Arizona Cardinals, 19-9 defeat to the Seattle Seahawks at home. And like we said, the Cardinals are trying to tread water through 6 weeks. They end up going 2-4, and now they'll get DeAndre Hopkins available, albeit on a short week. Now Robbie Anderson is involved in the offense there, as Kyler Murray has pretty much been asked to do it all. He can't do it all. That team has problems too. Cliff Kingsbury could be another guy that maybe you're talking about on the coaching block here if Arizona ends up having a bad year. But Seattle, look, you know what? They're being a very sneaky team. They're now 3-3. When some of us, including yours truly, were thinking they're maybe a 3-5 win team, and all of a sudden now they're 3-3 and only having to put up 19 points to do it on Sunday.
Yep, definitely.
Game of the year, Hank. It was being dubbed on last Sunday, the Bills and the Chiefs, and Buffalo gets past Kansas City 24-20. This, to me, was a game that the Bills had to win. I think they needed it from a mental standpoint as well as a standpoint of having the best record and having the playoffs go through Buffalo. And right now it's shaping up to be that way. Is now they have the tiebreaker against Kansas City, and they have pretty much almost like a 2-game lead if you look at it. But a big win there. And I think the Chiefs, and I think you look at it, Buffalo is well on their way now to a 15 or 16 win season.
Oh yeah, they're on fire. I don't know who's going to be stopping them in the AFC. I mean, the Chiefs had their chance to win that game, and I was shocked that the Bills even scored with 1 minute left. I was thinking that they made a mistake by giving Kansas City too much time, but then Pat Mahomes throws that interception. What do I know?
But see what I mean though, from a mental perspective, how huge that was, that actually they give the ball back to Mahomes with a minute left, and then they're able to get the job done this time. And how it could actually, this game, that if these two teams meet up again in the AFC Championship, that it has to go now through Buffalo. I mean, it is such a huge deal. But I think this Bills team's even better than they were last year, and I don't think the Chiefs are as good as they were last year. And now you're talking about the game having to go through Buffalo. As long as the Bills are healthy, because let's be fair. Miami did beat them, and I think Miami's good. I think they are a playoff team, especially if Tua can come back and be the Tua Tagovailoa that we saw before we got hurt. But the Bills were pretty banged up against that game. They were down a bunch of defensive players and stuff. I mean, if they're healthy and fully stuffed, I mean, this Bills team's better than they were last year. And now maybe the roles are reversed where you're going to Buffalo throughout. I mean, I think the Bills, from a mental perspective, needed this in such a big way, and I think this is going to be such a big boost to them throughout the season. To me, the Chiefs could afford to lose this game last Sunday against the Bills. I don't think the Bills could have afforded to lose it. I think this is such a huge win for Buffalo in so many ways.
Oh, at 100%.
And then on Sunday Night Football, the Eagles got past the Cowboys 26-17. Look, I thought this was a shot for Dallas to give Philadelphia their first loss of the year. The Eagles' offensive line was banged up. Cowboys, I felt like had a chance to get to Jalen Hurts, but Philadelphia is 6-0, and now the rumblings are going to be for Dallas. Dak Prescott. That's really what you're looking at now from a Dallas side. If Dak's going to be ready to come back against the Lions on Sunday.
Oh, definitely.
But before the game, all the I don't know if you saw with us on NBC. They're doing all their football picks, and of course, the only person on the NBC staff that picked Dallas to win was Florio, and I picked Dallas in an upset special, so I knew I was in big trouble when he said that. But Jason Garrett, even down there on the field, says "Fly Eagles fly." That's what everybody was talking about. But yeah, big win for Philly now, and they go to 6-0. So they're winning all these kinds of games, and Philly's going to be right up there in the NFC as well, as long as they stay healthy. But a huge win for them. And then the Monday night game, I mean, is it really worth talking about? The Broncos were on in prime time again, and the Chiefs and the Chargers got past them 19-16. I guess the big thing from this game would be that Russell Wilson has another injury on top of all the other stuff he's had to deal with in the early going, and we don't know if he's actually even going to be available to play against the Jets come Sunday. And
then, I'm probably going to pick the Jets regardless, but still.
Well, see, I will make our official picks come Friday. The only thing that would concern me about the Jets in that spot is Denver's defense is still really good, and you're going into the Mile High Air. That would be the one thing that I would be a little bit concerned about. I mean, of course, I'll make my official pick come Friday, but if Russell Wilson is not there, that is going to be, I know he hasn't played great, but I'm trying to figure out who the heck their backup is, because it's somebody that I know hasn't played in a long, long time. But if Wilson's not there and you're going to another string quarterback, Jets might have a chance, and I think they still might have a chance come Sunday. But major problems there in Denver. And think about it from the Chargers side of things now. They have not looked totally dominant through the first 6 weeks, and yet them and the Chiefs are both 4-2. And I think if they're fully healthy, I still think the Chargers are a better team than the Chiefs. I think they're throughout. Now, I know Bosa's out in the middle of being out for 8 to 10 weeks, but if those two teams play each other and they're both fully healthy, to me, the Chargers are a better team. But even not being at 100%, not looking great through the first 6 weeks, the Chargers are 4-2, and Denver now is 2-4 and dealing with a litany of problems, including the head coach who everybody wants out after 6 games. They wanted him out after the first game, but now they really want him out.
Yeah, and I can't say that I blame him. I mean, when you've got 3 videos profiled about you on Jaguar Gator 9's channel in the Dumb Decision series, that says a lot. And you're not even through your first year of coaching either.
Yeah, it's not good. Oh, okay. So if Wilson can't play on Sunday, they're going to Brett Ripken.
Who? Any
Ripien?
relation to Brett
Ripien. I believe he's played before.
Rippin.
Brett Ripien, yeah. He played 1 game in 21 and 3 games and started 1 for the Broncos in 2020. In his career, related? 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions.
Oh, he's related to the former Washington quarterback that won a Super Bowl, Mark Rippon.
Yes.
The nephew, actually.
So that's where we are 6 weeks into the NFL season. And Hank, I would say my biggest takeaway through the first 6 weeks is really, I think we know there are some great teams like the Eagles, like the Chargers, I still think are great. I think the Bills are great. I think the Chiefs are going to be up there. So I'll give you 4 teams right there. But everybody else, I mean, it's such a wild card right now in a league where the scoring's been down through the first 6 weeks. I think this league's, I think the top of the top, and then everybody else, it's kind of wide open.
Yeah, I definitely agree that anything can happen in this league.
Absolutely. We know that. We know that for sure. And just like that, Hank, we turn the calendar or we turn the page, and it's week 7 starting on Thursday Night Football already. And boy, another unspectacular Thursday night matchup as the New Orleans Saints travel to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. So it looks like it's going to be another Andy Dalton versus Kyler Murray matchup. And in this game, Hank, the Arizona Cardinals are actually a 2-point favorite at home with Robbie Anderson and DeAndre Hopkins both being active.
I am going to go with the Arizona Cardinals to win this one. Again, this is more of like a pick 'em for me, but not really confident this is going to be a great game, and I'm going with the better quarterback. So that's really the only explanation I can give you.
That's fair. I mean, Kyler Murray's had to do it all, but the thing, boy, this is such a tough matchup. I actually think this is a tough game to pick because the Saints are really banged up, and we know a lot of injuries to their receiving side. I mean, they've already ruled out a bunch of players. It looks like Chris Olave, their rookie wide receiver out of Ohio State, is going to return. But here's the thing to look at: the Saints with defensive issues, which is supposed to be their strength. The Cardinals, they don't win at home. I mean, we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when they were playing the Eagles, how they don't win at home, but they don't protect Kyler. They don't protect Kyler Murray, and they don't score, which is supposed to be their strength. Oh man, it's pretty much a pick 'em. I tell you though, oh man, because I originally was going to pick the Saints here. With all their injuries though, I'm thinking about changing my mind now. See, I did this last week. I was originally taking the Commanders, and then I changed my mind to the Bears, and I got bit. But again, I'm 9 games under 500, so of course I'm going to get bit. No, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna keep my pick here, and I know they're banged up and stuff. Arizona's been a major disappointment. I know they're getting Robbie Anderson. I know they're getting DeAndre Hopkins. It's also a short week for them to get all those practices and stuff in together, so the chemistry might be an issue. What the heck? Upset special. Give me the New Orleans Saints +2 to win on the road. Cardinals don't win at home, so I'm not even considering the road trip, the travel to mean anything here. I mean, let's be also honest too. The Saints are banged up, and they scored 26 points last week against the Bengals. You know what? Can the Saints put up 20 points and win this game? Absolutely, they could. And if not, maybe the Cardinals win 19-18, and you know what? That's a win. Saints +2 upset special to kick off Thursday Night Football and kick off week number 7. Of course, our full slate of NFL picks drop every Friday as part of Football Friday here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see if Hank and I can both get a winning week coming up this week. Well, Hank, one other thing to talk about here to wrap up the episode, and let's talk some basketball. Why not? The NBA season is underway. We had a doubleheader to kick things off on Tuesday night. We got games starting on Wednesday. Everybody's going to be in action here as we get rolling, including my New York Knicks, who open up against Memphis. I'm excited about that. But, Hank, when you look at this season, you know, let's start out in the Western Conference here because, obviously we got the defending champion Golden State Warriors. Not much has really changed with the Warriors, and I think that's how you have teams repeat. They are going to throw some kids into the mix, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman. But, of course, you still got Curry. You still got Draymond Green and his antics. But when he's on the court and he's playing, he's still a great player. Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, see if he can have another big jump. They did extend him. They did extend some guys this week too. So I think Golden State's got to be right up there in the West. See, the thing with the West is, Hank, it's not as deep as it's been in years past. It's Golden State. It's the Clippers. It's Denver. It's Phoenix really at the top. And then you've also got possibly Memphis, Dallas. 2 teams, though, to watch for me in the West, though, to see if they're going to make a jump, are the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Pelicans, who I like a lot, with Zion returning there in New Orleans. And then, of course, Minnesota, who made some big moves. Obviously, the big move they got was Rudy Gobert from Utah to go along with Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. I think those are 2 teams, though, that can make a jump on. So I like Minnesota and I like New Orleans. I will tell you, though, real quick, also from the West, and we saw it in the first game, and I was going to say this if we did our show on Tuesday, I am not in love with the Lakers. That team, to be honest with you, is not a team. It is a mess. That's what it is. I think that it is going to be a tough year for the Lakers. out there. But those are the teams I like out of the West. Golden State, to me, if they're healthy and that team is together, there's a reason why I'm picking them, because that core group's been there before, and that's how teams are very, very successful to me. I think I have Golden State making another trip back to the NBA Finals again this year out of the West.
Yeah, I can see it.
But
I can definitely see that happening.
But I look at it, I think there's a possibility. One of my bold predictions for the year is I don't think the Lakers get in. They might get in the play-in tournament, but I don't think they're making a very deep run this year. That team's got a lot of, they've got age, which is never a good thing. They've got ego, which is not a good thing. You already see LeBron complaining, which is not that good.
I mean, you made your bed with Russell Westbrook. Now you got to sleep in it.
Yeah, that is a problem. And of course, Utah, who's totally rebuilding this year. Sacramento, who is dealing with a long drought. I don't think they're doing it. San Antonio, I think that run is over with. Houston, Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's season really went in the dumps once Chet Holmgren has to go through the rehab from the foot injury. So I'm going to take Golden State out of the West.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. I would probably lean towards them as well.
But the real exciting thing with basketball this year is the Eastern Conference, because I think it's very, very deep. Obviously the Boston Celtics, the Brooklyn Nets, who we'll see how they we'll see how all those, speaking of antics and stuff, we'll see how Brooklyn can put it all together here with Harden, with Kyrie. What's it going to be like with Ben Simmons, who hasn't played a game in almost 500 days? I think the team, though, that I like a lot, Milwaukee I do like Philadelphia. I think the 76ers, look, this is as golden a chance as they're going to have this year. I know the East is loaded, but I do like the Sixers a lot out of the East. I think the Hawks are going to make a push. I love Cleveland. I love what they did. If they're all healthy and they're together, Donovan Mitchell, I said with Donovan Mitchell, to me, the Cavaliers are a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. I think they have that kind of potential. So I think they're going to be up there. The Miami Heat had an under-the-radar kind of summer. There's somebody to watch. The Raptors are going to be up there. The Bulls are. My Knicks. All right, let me talk about my Knicks here, because I like what they've done this offseason. I was bummed they didn't get Donovan Mitchell. Not going to lie, I was bummed. But at the same time, I'm not trading 3 to 4 players that were a big part of my future, because the Knicks are still in rebuild mode. I think the Knicks can get to 40 wins this year. I think they can get in the play-in tournament as their potential, but there's 2 problems the Knicks have this year. They don't really have a bona fide star. To me, RJ Barrett can be the next star, but they're not deep enough. I think they've got plenty of young players who can help. I think Jalen Brunson is going to help by accident. The Knicks have gotten literally no production on a point guard the last several years. So Brunson's going to give them more production there. But I just think in this Eastern Conference, I just listed off a ton of teams. I've listed off like 8 teams who I think are better than them. But if Barrett can become that superstar, and if Julius Randle can return to be the Randle that he was 2 years ago, then the Knicks can be over 500 this year. The problem is, again, the Eastern Conference to me is just way too loaded. The Knicks are doing this right, folks. They're doing this 15 years too late. That's the problem. They had to do this when the Eastern Conference was not as good, when everybody was in the West and nobody was in the East. Now it's the role, the conferences have completely flip-flopped. And now it's the East that's really deep. The Knicks will be fun to watch. I just don't think they're there yet. When you look at it, I think they're better than the Hornets, though. I think they're better than Detroit. I think they're better than Indiana. And I think they're better than Orlando. But all those other teams in the East, they're just too good. So the team that I expect to get out of the Eastern Conference this year is going to be either Cleveland, Philadelphia, or Milwaukee. Or I'd say even Boston, too. And the Nets even. So, that's the thing. The Eastern Conference is so loaded this year. It's so difficult. The only thing I would wonder with the Celtics is now that Ime Udoka is not there, how does that affect them?
I think that might hurt them, because he was a guy that a lot of the players liked, and now for them to have to go through that, and with a new coach defending an Eastern Conference championship, that could be a bit rough. And I'm thinking Philadelphia might be a team that overtakes them this year, but the window for them isn't really too long, because I don't know how many good years left you're going to get with James Harden on your team. And James Harden's been a guy that kind of has a reputation of not being the best come playoff time. And then obviously, yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head with the Knicks. They're finally going about a rebuild in a better way, but it's going to be a bit of time before they can really we will probably see it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're a playoff team this year.
I think they might get into the play. I think their potential is the play-in tournament, but I would have said that even if they had Donovan Mitchell, because I just don't think they're not deep enough, and the Eastern Conference is just too good. And when I look at the East, who I have coming out of the East, I don't. Again, without Ime Udoka, I'm very curious to see what happens with Boston. I mean, it might cost them a couple of games. Boston, the Nets to me have still too many question marks. Is Kyrie going to demand that he wants out? I know Durant now said that he's going to try and work with them, but how long? If the Nets start 2-8, are we going to go through this all over again? And their health is a question mark. Ben Simmons hasn't played a game again in almost 500 days. What is he going to be? He's going to probably start off rusty. I know they've got some other good role players to mix in there, but I'm not sure about the Nets. I'll tell you, the teams that I like out of the East this year are Milwaukee, and I think the 76ers can actually take the next step. So I'm going to go with an NBA Finals matchup of the Warriors and the 76ers. And my champion, repeat. I'm going to take the Warriors to repeat and do it all over again. Because this group, as long as they're healthy, they've been through this before. They know how to get it done.
Matchup between the team that used to play in Philadelphia against the current one. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not, right? Let's have some storylines for the NBA Finals in June. Yeah, so I'm going to take the Warriors to repeat as NBA champions, and they'll do it over the 76ers this year.
All right. I like that. I wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look, I'm very high on Steph Curry, and obviously the team that they've got, and I was high on them pretty much for as far back since like November or December of last year, and would love to see him add yet another feather to the cap.
Well, we'll find out. This is now where you start getting all four sports in. We're going to have a sports equinox here before you know it, Hank, and that's what's going to be fun. And look, it's going to be a relevant sports equinox for our favorite teams, because the Yankees now are playing in the ALCS. The Giants are 5-1. The Jets are 4-2. The Rangers are 3-1 in hockey. The Knicks are getting underway. The Nets are there. We're going to have a lot to talk about each and every week. And, college football's coming down the stretch. So this is the time of the year that we live for. We don't get a lot of sleep. We have so much to talk about. It's on overload. I'm looking forward to it. I know I'm going to be on with you again later on this week. And then, of course, we'll be back here on Friday for our Football Friday pick. So, just to run down our schedule here, folks, real quick. Thursday, Monty Moment coming up about college football, where we look back at last week, and I'll go over what I think the college football playoff picture is going to be. I'll give you 3 picks against the spread for college coming up on Thursday. Hopefully we can duplicate the 3-0 that we had there in college this past week. So that'll drop Thursday. Friday, we'll have our Football Friday picks against the spread, where we'll go through every game like we always do. And then, of course, we're back here next week, which will be episode number 30 of Game On. So we're already going through it. So, Hank, enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the sports action.
You do the same. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And, of course, folks, for Hank and Indictor, I'm Johnny Montalbano. This has been Game On here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. We'll see you later on this week, and then right back here for episode 30 next week.